Close your eyes for a moment and allow the hush of distant centuries to settle gently around you. You are standing on the cool, damp soil beside a broad and quietly flowing river. It is the 6th century before the Common Era. The night air is warm, yet touched by a faint breeze that carries the scent of wet reeds and smouldering resin from unseen hearths. Somewhere in the darkness a waterbird calls once, then falls silent again, before you rising slowly out of the shadowed plain like a dream. Carved from clay and starlight stands the vast city of Babylon. You feel the ground tremble ever so slightly beneath your sandals as a caravan passes behind you. Wooden wheels groan softly, camels snort and stamp, human voices murmur in languages that blur together into a low rhythmic hum. Above all this, towering walls stretch across the horizon, their outlines softened by moonlight. They seem almost alive, breathing in the slow pulse of the night. Torches flicker along their ramparts, each flame a tiny golden eye, watching the darkened world beyond. Your mind drifts toward the realization that you are about to step into one of the most celebrated cities of the ancient world. The Euphrates River glides beside you like a ribbon of black glass, reflecting scattered stars and the faint glow of distant lanterns. Somewhere within those walls lie wonders whispered about in marketplaces from Egypt to Anatolia. Somewhere within them also lie excesses and mysteries that travellers describe in hushed tones. For a moment it feels as though time itself has thinned. You can almost hear the footsteps of countless pilgrims who came before you. Their hopes, fears and ambitions seem to linger in the warm night air, mingling with the scent of bitumen and crushed herbs. A curious footnote preserved in later chronicles mentions that some visitors believed the city possessed a spirit of its own, as if the very bricks remembered every triumph and scandal. Gradually your attention returns to the physical world around you. You notice how the mud brick roadway beneath your feet is worn smooth by generations of passage. It holds the faint imprint of wagon ruts and the delicate patterns of woven sandals. Your fingers brush the surface of a nearby stone marker. It is rough and cool, still holding the memory of the sun that heated it hours ago. Records confirm, according to research integrated by scholars from institutions such as Yale and Oxford, that Babylon reached extraordinary prominence during the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar II. Archaeological excavations reveal massive fortifications and urban planning on a scale that astonished even rival empires. You feel a quiet sense of awe at the knowledge that you are approaching a place shaped by ambition so vast it reshaped the landscape itself. And yet as you stand here, a gentle uncertainty lingers. Historians continue to debate whether Babylon's grandeur was experienced by ordinary inhabitants as a blessing or as a burden. Some argue the city offered prosperity and protection. Others suggest it demanded endless labour and unwavering loyalty in return. The arguments split along lines of interpretation that remain unresolved even today. The night deepens. A faint metallic clink drifts from somewhere along the wall. Perhaps a guard adjusts his spear or shifts his weight against a shield rimmed with bronze. The sound echoes briefly, then dissolves into silence. Above you, constellations shimmer with patient indifference. You wonder how many watchers have stood exactly where you stand, gazing upward and searching the sky for signs of favour or warning. Oddly enough, a fragment of an ancient traveller's tale once claimed that merchants approaching Babylon sometimes carried small clay amulets shaped like miniature towers. These tokens were believed to ensure safe passage through the city gates. Whether such customs were widespread remains uncertain, but the image lingers in your imagination. You picture worn hands clutching tiny symbols of hope beneath the vast dome of stars. A distant scent of baking barley bread reaches you, warm and unexpectedly comforting. It reminds you that behind those formidable walls lie homes filled with ordinary rhythms. Children will be sleeping on reed mats. Elderly storytellers will be recounting myths beside flickering oil lamps. Lovers will be whispering promises in shaded courtyards. The city is not merely stone and ceremony. This is breath and heartbeat. You begin to walk. Each step carries you closer to the towering silhouette ahead. The Euphrates flows beside you like a silent companion, its surface rippling softly against the mud bank. Somewhere water laps against a moored boat. You hear the faint creak of rope under tension, the gentle slap of wood against wood. These small sounds anchor you in the present moment, even as your thoughts drift across centuries. In your ears, the echo of the modern world fades. No engines, no electric hum, no distant sirens, only wind brushing the river grass. Only the muted cadence of ancient life unfolding under the watch of a patient moon. You sense how vast the sky feels without the glare of artificial light. It seems to stretch forever, inviting contemplation. Scholars still disagree on whether Babylon's population at its peak exceeded 200,000 souls. Some propose a smaller number, citing limitations of water supply and food distribution. Others insist the city's sophisticated canals and granaries could sustain an immense urban community. As you imagine the countless lives contained within those walls, the question takes on a strangely personal weight. How would it feel to be one voice among so many? A warm gust of wind carries the faint sweetness of date palms. It rustles the hem of your garment and brushes against your skin like a quiet reassurance. The journey ahead no longer feels daunting. Instead, it feels inevitable, as if history itself has extended a hand and invited you forward. You pause once more to look at the looming fortifications. Their immense bulk no longer appears merely intimidating. Now they seem almost welcoming, like the threshold of a story waiting to unfold. Somewhere beyond them lies wonder. Somewhere beyond them lies temptation. The city of wonders and sin stands ready to reveal itself, one shadowed street and luminous shrine at a time. With a steady breath, you take another step toward the gates. The road curves gently toward the heart of the looming walls, and before long, the faint glow of torches becomes a radiant blaze. You find yourself approaching an entrance unlike any you have ever imagined. Rising before you is a gateway of astonishing colour and presence. Even beneath the pale wash of moonlight, its surface gleams with deep blues and warm golds. The Ishtar Gate stands like a vision drawn from the realm of gods, its glazed bricks catching every flicker of flame and reflecting it in subtle waves of light. For a moment you feel compelled to slow your pace. Your senses fill with details. The air carries a sharp tang of bitumen, the sticky substance used to bind the bricks. It mingles with the perfume of incense drifting from small braziers placed along the approach. You hear the quiet shuffle of travellers ahead, the murmur of awe that seems to rise naturally when eyes first behold this monument of Ishtar. Your fingertips brush the surface of one of the outer walls. The glaze is unexpectedly smooth, cool, despite the heat stored in the clay beneath. In the torchlight you notice rows of carefully crafted animals emerging from the deep blue background. Lions stride forward with muscular confidence. Bulls lower their horns in silent challenge. Serpentine creatures with scaled bodies and horned heads twist in stylized motion. Records confirm that these symbolic figures represented divine guardianship and archaeological reconstruction, studied by researchers associated with institutions such as Stanford. Oxford suggests the colours were chosen to evoke celestial protection. You step beneath the towering arch. The sound of your own footsteps changes immediately. What had been soft earth and scattered gravel becomes firm paving stones. Each footfall produces a faint echo that travels upward into the vast hollow of the gate. It feels as though you are walking through the throat of a colossal creature swallowed into the living body of the city. A curious footnote from later Greek observers describes how some visitors believe the gate itself possessed a ritual power. They claimed that passing under its arch cleansed travellers of misfortune gathered along dusty roads. Whether this belief was widespread remains uncertain, yet you sense how architecture here serves not only practical needs, but also spiritual imagination. On the other side, the processional way unfolds before you in a long and gently curving path. Its paving stones are laid with precise care, their surfaces worn to a subtle sheen by countless ceremonies. High walls flank the road on both sides, rising like cliffs painted in hues of deep azure and pale cream. Relief sculptures of lions appear at regular intervals, each one caught mid-stride. Their open mouths reveal carved teeth. Their tails curve with stylized grace. In the shifting light of torches, they seem almost to move. Your mind drifts to the realization that this road is more than a simple thoroughfare. It is a stage upon which the drama of empire is performed. Council decrees preserved on clay tablets prove that during major festivals, statues of the gods were carried along this very path. Priests in elaborate robes would chant hymns. Musicians would beat drum that reverberated through the city like a second heartbeat. You imagine the swell of sound and colour, the press of bodies eager to glimpse divine presence. At this late hour, the processional way is quieter. A few figures move ahead of you, silhouettes wrapped in cloaks that catch the torchlight in soft folds. Somewhere above, a watchman coughs the sound, echoing briefly before dissolving into the night. The scent of burning oil grows stronger as you proceed. It clings faintly to your skin, a reminder that illumination here is earned through flame and labour. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside recorded by later historians and suggests that during certain celebrations revellers would scatter flower petals mixed with crushed aromatic herbs across the paving stones. The mixture created a fragrant carpet that released bursts of scent underfoot. Whether this was a widespread custom or merely an indulgence of the wealthy remains uncertain, yet the thought lingers as you notice the faint residue of something sweet beneath the sharper smell of smoke. Your gaze lifts upwards again. Above the walls, the tops of towers and rooftops appear like jagged silhouettes against the stars. You sense the layered complexity of the city rising beyond your immediate view. Streets intersect unseen. Courtyards hold secrets. Gardens sleep in darkness. The processional way is merely the first thread in a vast tapestry of urban life. Scholars still argue over the precise meaning of the mythical creatures depicted alongside the lions and bulls. Some interpret them as symbols of cosmic order. Others propose they served as political statements asserting the king's dominion over both earthly and supernatural realms. The lack of unanimous agreement lends the carvings an additional layer of mystery. As you walk, you feel their silent eyes upon you guardians, whose true intentions remain open to interpretation. Your steps grow more confident. The initial awe softens into a steady sense of belonging, as though the city is gradually accepting your presence. A breeze slips down the length of the road, stirring dust in the hem of your garment. It carries faint music from somewhere deeper within the walls, perhaps a distant lute, perhaps only the echo of memory shaped by your imagination. You notice how the paving stones beneath you hold subtle variations in colour. Some are pale and worn, others retain a richer tone as though replaced or repaired over generations. These details remind you that Babylon is not frozen in time. It evolves layer upon layer, shaped by human hands and ambitions. For a moment you pause beside one of the sculpted lions. You study its form in the wavering light. The artist who shaped this creature lived centuries ago, yet his vision endures in fired clay and pigment. You feel an unexpected kinship with that unknown craftsperson. Both of you in different ways are travellers through the same unfolding story. Gradually the processional way bends slightly to the left. Ahead new lights appear brighter and more numerous. The hum of life grows louder. Voices blend into a tapestry of language and laughter. Somewhere a door slams, somewhere else a burst of song rises and falls. The city's inner rhythms begin to reveal themselves. You draw a slow breath. The scent of incense mingles now with spices and cooking grain. Warmth radiates from unseen hearths. The night no longer feels vast and solitary. It feels alive, inviting you deeper into its luminous corridors. And so you continue following the ceremonial road toward the heart of Babylon, guided by torchlight and the quiet promise of discovery. The glow ahead gradually gathers into a constellation of lanterns and small fires, each one marking a place where human voices cluster and trade flows like an invisible river. The processional way narrows into branching streets paved with worn clay and scattered reeds. As you step into this livelier quarter, the city seems to inhale you fully at last. Sound thickens around you. A donkey brays with indignant force, metal rings faintly as a scale is adjusted. Somewhere a woman laughs, the sound bright as struck glass. Your senses awaken in waves. Warm air carries the fragrance of cumin and roasted sesame. You catch the sweetness of crushed figs and the sharper note of fermenting barley. The ground beneath your sandals feels uneven, now patched and repatched through the passing of years. It is a reminder that markets grow organically shaped by the necessity rather than royal decree. For a moment it feels as though you are drifting through a dream woven of colour and movement. Stalls line both sides of the street, their awnings dyed in faded reds and dusty yellows. Flickering oil lamps illuminate heaps of goods arranged with deliberate care. Clay jars filled with honey gleam like captured sunlight. Rolls of woven cloth spill across wooden tables in waves of indigo and cream. Traders gesture with animated hands, their bracelets chiming softly against one another. Records confirm that Babylon stood at a crossroads of commerce linking distant regions of the ancient world. Tablets deciphered by modern scholars associated with universities such as Stanford and Oxford reveal detailed lists of imports and exports from lapis lazuli mined in faraway mountains to cedar wood floated downriver from northern forests. As you watch the exchange of goods and glances, you sense the invisible web of routes stretching outward beyond the horizon. You pause near a stall where a young merchant arranges small cones of brightly coloured powder. The pigments glow even in dim light as though they possess their own secret radiance. He notices your curiosity and offers a faint smile. The air here tastes faintly of chalk and crushed petals. You imagine artisans using such colours to decorate walls or paint ceremonial masks. Oddly enough, one curious footnote preserved in later writings claims that certain vendors sold miniature clay figurines meant to protect buyers from dishonest bargains. These tiny guardians were often hidden beneath the folds of a garment during negotiations. Whether such charms truly swayed fortune remains uncertain, yet the idea lingers as you watch two traders clasp hands in solemn agreement. A pair of musicians sits cross-legged beside a low table stacked with copper bowls. One plucks the strings of a lute with practiced grace. The other taps a steady rhythm with slender sticks. Their melody flows gently through the crowd, weaving itself into the cadence of bargaining voices and shuffling feet. For a moment you feel the city's pulse, not as something overwhelming, but as something almost soothing. You notice how people move here with purposeful energy. Porters carry baskets brimming with grain upon their shoulders. Children dart between adults like swift shadows. An elderly woman pauses to examine a length of embroidered cloth, her fingers tracing its patterns with quiet concentration. Every gesture seems to carry meaning shaped by habit and survival. Scholars still disagree on how strictly prices were regulated in Babylonian markets. Some argue that royal oversight ensured fairness and stability. Others propose that negotiation remained an art guided by personal skill and social standing. The lack of consensus adds another layer of intrigue to the scene unfolding before you. You wonder how many fortunes were made or lost beneath these flickering lamps. The scent of freshly baked bread drifts toward you, again warmer, now richer. It leads you to a stall where flat loaves rest upon woven trays. Steam curls upward in delicate threads. You feel the comforting familiarity of hunger stir within you, reminding you that even in a city of wonders, the simplest needs remain unchanged. A sudden commotion draws your attention. Two men argue over the quality of dyed wool, their voices rising above the surrounding murmur. Gestures become sharper. For a brief instant, tension ripples through the nearby crowd. Then, as quickly as it began, the dispute dissolves into reluctant laughter. A handful of coin changes hands. Life resumes its steady flow. You sense how conflict and cooperation coexist here like twin currents in the same stream. In your ears, the music shifts to a slower tune. It seems almost to invite reflection. You find yourself studying the faces around you. Some appear weary, lined by years of labour beneath sun and dust. Others glow with youthful confidence. A few reveal expressions that are harder to read, as though secrets lie just beneath the surface. One scandalous aside recorded by later chroniclers suggests that markets like this sometimes served as meeting places for clandestine romances and political intrigue. Lovers exchanged coded messages while pretending to haggle over fruit. Informants whispered intelligence into cupped hands. Whether these tales are exaggerated or grounded in truth remains uncertain, yet the possibility adds a subtle thrill to your wandering. Your mind drifts towards the realization that you are witnessing more than commerce. You are witnessing the daily negotiation of identity and belonging. Each transaction binds strangers together, if only for a moment. Each shared glance becomes part of the city's ever-shifting tapestry. A breeze stirs overhead, fluttering the edges of awnings and scattering faint dust into the lantern light. You feel grains settle upon your skin, cool and almost pleasant. The sky above the narrow street appears as a ribbon of darkness punctuated by distant stars. It feels impossibly far away from the warm immediacy of human presence below. Gradually the crowd begins to thin. The music fades into softer echoes. Ahead, the street slopes gently upwards toward darker silhouettes that suggest temples or civic buildings. You sense that you are leaving behind one layer of Babylon to encounter another, deeper and perhaps more sacred. With a quiet breath, you step forward once more, carrying with you the lingering sense of spice and smoke, the memory of laughter and argument, and the growing awareness that every corner of this city holds a story waiting to unfold. The street beneath your feet begins to rise almost imperceptibly, and the lively clamour of the market settles behind you like the fading echo of a dream. The air grows calmer here. You notice a subtle change in scent as well. Instead of cumin and roasted grain, there is now the fragrance of resin myrrh and crushed cedar wood. It drifts through the warm night like a whispered invitation. Ahead, dark shapes resolve into monumental forms. Wide stairways climb upward in steady tiers, their outlines softened by the dim glow of temple lamps. For a moment, it feels as though the city itself has taken on a slower breath. Your sandals press against smoother stone. The rough textures of trade and dust give way to surfaces shaped with deliberate reverence. You pause at the base of a broad flight of steps and lift your gaze. Rising before you is a ziggurat dedicated to Marduk, the chief deity of Babylon. Its terraced levels ascend toward the heavens, each platform edged by shadow and faint gold light. Records confirm that temple complexes form the spiritual and administrative heart of Babylonian life. Archaeological research interpreted by scholars connected with institutions such as Yale and Oxford suggests that these towering structures were not merely places of worship, but centres of learning, record-keeping and ritual governance. As you stand at the foot of the steps, you sense the weight of centuries pressing gently upon your thoughts. Your hand rests briefly on the stone beside you. It is warm from the memory of sunlight absorbed earlier in the day. You feel the faint irregularities carved by tools long since turned to dust. Somewhere above, a low chant rises and falls in measured cadence. It carries the soft rhythm of voices trained to sustain sacred sound without strain. The vibration reaches you like the distant pulse of a drum. You begin to climb. Each step feels purposeful. The climb is not steep, yet it demands attention. Your breathing deepens. The air grows slightly cooler as a breeze slips across the open terraces. Lantern flames tremble in its wake, casting shifting patterns upon the walls. You sense that this ascent is both physical and symbolic, a gradual movement away from the bustle of ordinary concerns. A curious footnote preserved in certain later accounts claims that some pilgrims scattered small offerings of grain, upon these very steps as they climbed. The act was believed to honour the divine order sustaining both harvest and city. Whether such gestures were common or merely poetic embellishments remains uncertain, yet the image lingers in your imagination. You picture kernels glinting like tiny stars upon the stone. Halfway up, you pause beside a niche carved into the wall. Within it stands a small clay lamp, its wick burning steadily. The scent of oil smoke curls upward in delicate spirals. You notice faint inscriptions etched into the surrounding surface. Their shapes resemble flowing rivers and sharp angles, the cuneiform script that once captured prayers and decrees alike. Your fingers trace the grooves, feeling history as texture rather than abstraction. Scholars still disagree on whether the ziggurat's highest platform served primarily as a ritual observatory or as a symbolic dwelling place for the god. Some argue that priests ascended nightly to commune with celestial signs. Others propose the structure functioned mainly as a monumental statement of cosmic hierarchy. The arguments split along lines of interpretation that continue to shift as new fragments of evidence emerge. As you resume climbing, the sounds of the city fade even further. Now you hear only the soft brush of your garment against stone and the distant murmur of chanting. A sense of anticipation settles within you, gentle yet undeniable. The higher you rise, the more the world below feels distant, like a memory glimpsed through water. At the next terrace, you encounter a small group of temple attendants moving in quiet procession. Their robes are pale-edged with subtle embroidery that catches the lamplight. Each carries a shallow bowl filled with fragrant herbs. As they pass, the scent envelops you in a fleeting cloud of sweetness and bitterness intertwined. None speak. Their silence feels intentional, as though words might disturb the fragile balance of sacred space. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside recorded by ancient commentators suggests that certain priests were rumoured to possess secret knowledge of hidden chambers within the temple complex. These spaces, it was said, stored rare texts and ritual objects glimpsed only by a select few. Whether such stories reflect truth or imagination remains uncertain, yet they add a layer of intrigue to the quiet grandeur surrounding you. You reach the upper terrace at last. The horizon opens in all directions. From this height, the lanterns of Babylon appear like scattered constellations across the darkened plain. The Euphrates glimmers in the distance, a silver thread winding through shadow. Warm wind brushes your face, carrying faint traces of smoke and distant laughter. Before you stands a doorway framed by carved symbols of divine authority. Beyond it, deeper sanctuaries await places where flame and whispered prayer shape the unseen rhythms of belief. You feel neither fear nor urgency. Instead, there is a calm awareness that you are standing at a threshold between worlds. Your mind drifts toward the realization that faith here is not confined to quiet reflection. It is woven into law harvests and the turning of seasons. Every brick of this temple complex seems to affirm the idea that order in the heavens must be mirrored upon the earth. You wonder how many generations have climbed these steps, seeking reassurance that their lives mattered within the vast design of existence. For a long moment you simply stand and listen. The chant rises once more, soft and steady. It echoes across the terrace like a promise carried by wind. Somewhere below, the city continues its restless motion. Up here, time feels suspended, held gently between breath and silence. Then, with unhurried steps, you move closer to the sacred doorway, ready to discover what lies beyond. The threshold yields beneath your quiet approach, and you pass into a chamber where shadow and flame weave together in slow, deliberate harmony. The air here feels heavier, almost textured, as though centuries of whispered prayers have gathered into an unseen presence. Oil lamps burn in recessed alcoves along the walls. Their light flickers gently across painted reliefs depicting celestial symbols coiling serpents of time and stars, arranged in deliberate patterns. You sense immediately that this is a place where the unseen is given careful shape. Your footsteps soften against smooth stone. The temperature is cooler inside, touched by the faint dampness of ancient masonry. A low hum of voices emerges from deeper within the sanctuary. It is not quite speech, not quite song, but something between the two. The rhythm settles into your breathing, guiding it toward a slower and more contemplative pace. Ahead, a group of priests stands around a shallow bronze basin set upon a carved pedestal. Wisps of fragrant smoke rise from its surface, curling upward like pale ribbons. You notice how the priests move with measured grace. Their gestures are precise, practiced through repetition and belief. One lifts a slender rod and dips it briefly into the smoke, then traces a symbol in the air. The motion feels both simple and profoundly intentional. Records confirm that Babylonian ritual life included elaborate systems of divination designed to interpret divine will. Clay tablets uncovered and studied by researchers connected with institutions such as Stanford and Oxford describe ceremonies in which priests examine patterns in flame smoke and even the entrails of sacrificial animals. The aim was not mere curiosity, it was the pursuit of guidance in matters of harvest governance and survival. As you observe the ritual unfolding before you, you sense the gravity of such practices in a world shaped by uncertainty. A curious footnote from later chronicles suggests that certain temple officials specialized in interpreting dreams reported by citizens. These visions were believed to carry coded messages from the gods. Whether such interpretations offered genuine comfort or subtle social control remains uncertain, yet the thought lingers as you study the attentive faces around the basin. The scent of burning cedar thickens. It settles upon your tongue with a bitter-sweet taste. Somewhere nearby a small bell chimes, once its clear tone lingering in the Fabian cool air. You notice shelves carved into the walls, each holding clay tablets arranged with careful order. Their surfaces bear the familiar wedge-shaped impressions of cuneiform script. Here knowledge rests not only in memory, but in fired earth that endures long after human voices fall silent. Scholars still argue over how much authority these diviners truly possessed in shaping royal decisions. Some interpret historical records as evidence of profound influence. Others propose that kings used ritual consultation primarily to legitimize choices already made. The absence of unanimous agreement adds a subtle tension to the serene scene before you. You wonder whether faith here is entirely voluntary or quietly guided by unseen currents of power. A young attendant passes near you carrying a shallow bowl filled with fine sand. He kneels beside the basin and scatters a thin layer across its rim. Then he studies the patterns formed as grains settle into delicate lines. His expression is intent, almost reverent. You sense that every movement in this chamber is part of a language spoken between humanity and the divine. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside, recorded in certain later texts, claims that rival priests sometimes debated the meaning of omens with surprising intensity, their disagreements echoing through temple corridors long after rituals had ended. Whether these disputes reflected genuine intellectual passion or subtle competition for prestige remains uncertain, yet the possibility lends a dimension to the solemn atmosphere. You move closer to a painted panel, illuminated by a single lamp. It depicts the night sky, rendered in deep blue pigment scattered with tiny golden stars. A stylized figure raises both arms toward the heavens as though inviting their secrets to descend. The image stirs a quiet reflection within you. How different is this ancient longing from the modern search for meaning in distant galaxies and silent equations? The chanting grows softer now, fading into a gentle murmur. One by one the priests step back from the basin. Smoke thins into pale wisps that dissolve against the high ceiling. A sense of completion settles over the chamber, like the final note of a melody allowed to linger before silence claims it. For a moment you stand in stillness. The cool stone beneath your feet grounds you in the present, even as your thoughts drift across time. You realize that here within these walls uncertainty is not feared, but ritualized. Questions become ceremonies. doubt becomes structured reverence. As you turn toward the doorway leading outward, a faint breeze brushes past you, carrying the distant sound of the city once more. Laughter, footsteps, the soft bark of a dog somewhere beyond the temple precinct. The world of daily life awaits below, vibrant and imperfect. Yet you carry with you the memory of flame read like scripture, of smoke treated as a message of human minds reaching upward through symbol and belief. You sense that this encounter will shape how you perceive every street and courtyard that lies ahead. With measured steps, you leave the sanctuary behind and begin your descent toward the layered wonders of Babylon, guided by the quiet echo of bells and the lingering scent of sacred fire. The stairway leads you down once more into the wider, breathing body of the city. Sacred silence loosens its hold with each step. Gradually, the hum of human activity returns, at first as a distant murmur, and then as a textured chorus of footsteps, soft laughter, and the faint clatter of pottery being stacked for the night. The air feels warmer again. It carries the mingled scents of damp earth, crushed mint leaves, and something sweetly perfumed that you cannot quite name. For a moment it feels as though you are emerging from a dream into another dream layered upon it. Ahead, beyond a cluster of low administrative buildings, rises a complex of royal residences. Their walls are higher and smoother than those of ordinary homes. Lanterns burn within recessed niches, casting calm pools of golden light across polished courtyards. Guards move in measured circuits, their bronze helmets glinting softly each time they pass through a beam of illumination. Your sandals touch flagstones arranged in geometric patterns. The stone is cool now, holding only a faint memory of the day's heat. Somewhere nearby, water trickles into a narrow channel lined with carved limestone. The sound is gentle and continuous, like a quiet reassurance that life here is carefully ordered. Records confirm that Babylon's palaces during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar II were expanded and adorned with unprecedented ambition. Archaeological interpretations discussed by scholars connected with universities such as Yale and Stanford describe multi-layered complexes that combined administrative offices, ceremonial halls, private gardens, and defensive structures. As you step into the outer courtyard, you sense how power expresses itself, not only through command, but through space shaped to inspire awe. Tall date palms rise from carefully tended beds of soil. Their fronds rustle softly in the night breeze. Between them grow clusters of flowering shrubs whose scent is rich and almost intoxicating. You pause beside a shallow reflecting pool where lamplight shivers across the surface like scattered coins. The water holds the reflection of a colonnade supported by pillars painted in faded hues of red and white. A curious footnote preserved in certain later accounts suggests that royal gardeners sometimes cultivated rare plants brought from distant lands as living symbols of imperial reach. Whether this practice was widespread or limited to moments of ceremonial display remains uncertain, yet you imagine how each unfamiliar blossom might have stirred wonder among visitors. From an open doorway drifts the low murmur of conversation. You glimpse figures seated upon woven cushions arranged around a table laden with scrolls and clay tablets. Their gestures are restrained but purposeful. A hand lifts to emphasize a point. Another rests upon a seal carved from polished stone. You sense that decisions made in such quiet rooms ripple outward across provinces and deserts alike. Scholars still disagree on how accessible the royal court truly was to ordinary citizens seeking justice or favour. Some propose that structured petitions allowed grievances to reach the highest authority. Others argue that layers of officials and ritual formality created barriers difficult to overcome. The debate continues, adding a note of ambiguity to the ordered elegance surrounding you. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside recorded by ancient commentators claims that palace corridors occasionally became settings for whispered intrigues and secret alliances. Courtiers exchanged coded messages beneath painted ceilings, while musicians played nearby to mask the sound of their words. Whether these tales reflect common practice or dramatic exaggeration remains uncertain, yet the possibility lingers like a shadow at the edge of lamplight. You continue along a covered walkway where carved reliefs depict scenes of royal triumph. Chariots roll forward with stylized vigor. Soldiers stand in disciplined ranks. Captive enemies appear with bowed heads. The artistry is deliberate, intended to shape memory as much as to record events. Your fingers brush the cool surface of the stone. You feel both admiration and a subtle unease at the narrative of conquest frozen in pigment and form. Beyond the walkway lies another garden enclosed by low walls. Here the atmosphere shifts again. The scent of damp moss rises from shaded corners. A nightbird calls once from the branches of a fig tree. You notice how the ground is strewn with small pebbles arranged in swirling patterns. They crunch softly underfoot, creating a rhythm that feels almost meditative. A young attendant approaches, carrying a tray of small ceramic cups. He offers one with a respectful nod. The liquid within is warm and faintly sweet, perhaps infused with dates or herbs. As you sip, you feel a gentle relaxation spread through your body. The taste is both unfamiliar and comforting, a reminder that hospitality here carries its own quiet rituals. In your ears, distant music begins to rise. It is softer than the lively tunes of the market, more measured and contemplative. The notes drift through open colonnades and across the still surface of the reflecting pool. They seem to invite reflection on the delicate balance between authority and vulnerability that defines every seat of power. Your mind drifts toward the realization that these palaces, for all their splendor, exist within the same fragile world as the humblest mud-brick dwelling. Fire, flood, ambition, and time itself threaten every human creation. The lantern flames that illuminate these courtyards tonight may one day flicker out, leaving only silent ruins for future wanderers to interpret. You linger a moment longer beneath the palms, watching their shadows sway gently upon the walls. Then, guided by the distant music and the promise of further wonders, you move onward through the perfumed gardens and into the deeper mysteries of Babylon's royal heart. A pale softness begins to gather at the edge of the sky, almost imperceptible at first. The night is not yet gone, yet something within the air has shifted. As you leave the shaded corridors of the palace gardens, you notice a faint silver glow resting upon distant rooftops. Dawn approaches like a quiet promise. The pathways before you curve gently upward again, leading toward a place spoken of in hushed admiration by travellers and poets alike. For a moment it feels as though you are walking toward a mirage. Rising ahead in layered terraces is a vision of green that seems almost impossible within the dusty plains of Mesopotamia. Vines spill over stone ledges. Small trees stretch their branches toward the paling sky. Clusters of flowering plants glow faintly in the dim light, their petals catching the first hint of morning. The hanging gardens, legendary even in your own time, reveal themselves slowly as you draw nearer. The scent here is unlike anything you've encountered since entering Babylon. Moist earth, crushed leaves, and the cool breath of flowing water mingle into an aroma both fresh and deeply soothing. You feel it settle within your lungs like a gentle cleansing. After the incense of temples and the spice of markets, this living fragrance feels almost miraculous. Records confirm that ancient writers described elaborate terraced gardens constructed during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar II, though archaeological certainty about their exact location remains elusive. Interpretations discussed by scholars connected with institutions such as Oxford and Stanford suggest sophisticated irrigation systems may have lifted river water upward through hidden channels. As you climb the first tier, you sense how engineering and imagination might have joined to shape this extraordinary sanctuary. Your sandals press against steps bordered by moss and delicate shoots of grass. Droplets cling to the stone, cool and refreshing against your skin. Somewhere nearby, water cascades gently from a carved spout into a narrow basin. The sound is soft yet persistent, like the steady rhythm of breathing. It fills the space with an atmosphere of calm attentiveness. A curious footnote preserved in later Greek accounts claims that exotic birds were sometimes kept within these gardens to delight the royal household. Their bright feathers and unfamiliar songs would have added another layer of wonder to the already dreamlike setting. Whether such stories reflect daily reality or poetic embellishment remains uncertain, yet as you hear a faint flutter in the branches above, the possibility feels vivid. You wander along a winding path shaded by fig trees and climbing roses. Their leaves brush lightly against your arm, leaving a cool trace of moisture. The sky continues to brighten, turning from charcoal to soft indigo. You notice how the city beyond the garden walls begins to stir. Smoke rises in thin spirals from early hearths. A distant rooster calls its voice, carrying across the rooftops. Scholars still debate whether the Hanging Gardens truly existed as a single monumental structure or as a collection of cultivated terraces integrated into palace architecture. Some argue that ancient descriptions were exaggerated by travellers eager to impress distant audiences. Others maintain that Babylonian ingenuity was fully capable of realizing such a marvel. The arguments remain unresolved, lending the gardens an enduring aura of mystery. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside recorded in certain later narratives suggests that the gardens also served as a discreet meeting place for members of the royal court seeking privacy from the rigid protocols of palace halls. Lovers and conspirators alike may have found shelter among the shaded pathways and murmuring fountains. Whether this notion reflects truth or romantic imagination remains uncertain, yet you sense how easily secrets could be hidden within this living labyrinth. You pause beside a terrace overlooking the Euphrates. From this height the river appears transformed by dawn. Its dark surface now gleams with pale gold light like molten metal poured across the land. Boats drift slowly along its course, their silhouettes softened by morning mist. The sight fills you with quiet awe. You realize how deeply the city depends upon this flowing lifeline, how every garden and granary owes its existence to the river's patient generosity. A gentle breeze stirs the branches overhead. Dewdrops fall in tiny silver arcs, tapping softly against leaves and stone. You close your eyes for a moment, allowing the sounds and scents to settle into memory. In this suspended instant, the burdens of empire and ambition feel distant. The gardens offer a glimpse of harmony shaped by human effort, yet sustained by nature's enduring rhythms. As you continue along the terrace, you notice gardeners already at work. They move with practiced efficiency, trimming vines, adjusting channels of water, checking the health of tender shoots. Their presence reminds you that beauty here is not effortless. It is maintained through daily devotion, through hands that coax life from soil and stone alike. Your mind drifts toward the realization that legends of wonder often conceal the quiet labor that makes them possible. The Hanging Gardens may symbolize royal love or imperial pride, yet they also embody countless acts of care performed beyond the gaze of chroniclers. This awareness deepens your appreciation of the place. Gradually, the sun's first rays touch the highest leaves, igniting them in shades of gold and emerald. The city awakens below. Voices rise, wheels begin to turn, somewhere a temple bell rings softly. You sense that your journey through Babylon has reached another turning point, one illuminated not by torchlight but by the gentle clarity of morning. With unhurried steps you descend from the terrace and prepare to explore the next unfolding layer of this extraordinary city. Morning unfolds fully as you leave the cool terraces behind. Sunlight spreads across Babylon like a slow blessing, touching rooftops, temple towers, and narrow streets with soft warmth. The scent of damp leaves fades into the more familiar aromas of waking households. You notice the sharp tang of fresh clay, the comforting smell of baking grain, and the faint sweetness of date syrup simmering somewhere nearby. The city no longer whispers. It speaks in steady, purposeful tones. The path before you leads toward a broad square framed by low stone buildings. Their entrances are shaded by woven awnings that ripple gently in the breeze. Here the rhythm of commerce has not yet reached the lively urgency of the market you visited during the night. Instead, you sense a quieter concentration. People gather in small clusters, speaking in measured voices. Some hold tablets wrapped carefully in cloth, others carry bundles of reed styluses tucked into belts. For a moment, it feels as though you are entering a place where words themselves become instruments of power. You step closer to one of the open doorways and peer inside. Rows of wooden shelves line the walls, each stacked with clay tablets arranged according to some unseen system. A scribe sits cross-legged on the floor, his head bent in focused attention. He presses the tip of his stylus into the soft surface of a tablet, creating neat wedges that capture transactions, agreements, and judgments alike. Records confirm that Babylonian administration relied heavily on written documentation to maintain order across its vast domains. Archaeological findings interpreted by scholars connected with institutions such as Yale and Oxford reveal legal codes, tax records, and court proceedings inscribed with remarkable precision. As you watch the scribe at work, you sense how literacy here becomes both a skill and a responsibility, shaping the structure of daily life. A curious footnote preserved in later texts suggests that some scribes developed personal styles recognizable even centuries afterward. Their distinctive impressions in clay were said to function almost like signatures, allowing officials to verify authenticity. Whether this detail reflects common practice or isolated instances remains uncertain, yet it adds a human dimension to the quiet industry unfolding before you. You move toward the center of the square where a raised platform stands beneath a canopy. A magistrate in a simple yet finely woven robe listens as two citizens present their dispute. Their voices remain calm, though their gestures reveal underlying tension. A small crowd gathers at a respectful distance. You notice how everyone seems attentive not only to the outcome but to the process itself. Scholars still argue over the extent to which Babylonian justice balanced rigid codes with personal interpretation. Some propose that established laws provided clear guidance, ensuring consistency across cases. Others suggest that local officials exercise considerable discretion, shaped by social status and circumstance. The debate continues, reflecting the complexity of a society striving to reconcile order with compassion. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside recorded by later commentators claims that clever litigants occasionally attempted to sway outcomes by presenting gifts disguised as tokens of gratitude. Such practices were officially condemned, yet whispers of influence persisted in popular imagination. Whether these tales reflect genuine corruption or exaggerated rumor remains uncertain, yet they remind you that human nature seldom changes across centuries. A breeze carries the rustle of parchment and the murmur of consultation. You notice a group of apprentices seated near the platform, copying passages from older tablets onto fresh clay. Their expressions are serious, almost solemn. Each stroke of the stylus becomes an act of preservation, ensuring that memory endures beyond the fragile span of a single lifetime. The sunlight grows stronger, casting defined shadows across the square. Dust motes drift through the air like tiny floating worlds. You feel warmth settle upon your shoulders, grounding you in the present moment. The contrast between this structured civic space and the lush freedom of the gardens lingers in your thoughts. Both reveal different facets of Babylon's identity. In your ears, the soundscape shifts again. The distant clatter of carts signals the beginning of another busy day. A dog barks somewhere beyond the square. A child's laughter rises briefly bright and unrestrained. Life continues to unfold in layers both ordinary and profound. Your mind drifts toward the realization that laws and records are attempts to capture the unpredictable flow of human experience. They offer guidance, yet they can never fully contain the richness of individual stories. As you watch the magistrate raise his hand to announce a decision, you sense the delicate balance between certainty and doubt that defines every act of governance. You linger a moment longer, observing the careful ritual of sealing the tablet with a carved cylinder. The impression left behind is intricate and unmistakable. It transforms soft clay into binding agreement. The gesture feels symbolic of the broader city itself, shaping chaos into form through deliberate intention. Then, guided by curiosity and the steady pull of the Euphrates glimmering beyond distant rooftops, you step away from the square and continue your journey into the flowing heart of Babylon's daily life. The streets gradually slope downward toward the shimmering thread of water that has guided your journey since the first moment you approach the city. Sunlight now glitters upon the Euphrates in broad flashes of gold and pale silver. As you move closer, the air grows cooler and touched by a faint, refreshing dampness. The scent of river reeds mingles with the aroma of tar-sealed boat hulls and the sharp tang of freshly cut timber stacked along the banks. For a moment, it feels as though the entire city leans toward this flowing presence. You step onto a packed earthen path where footprints overlap in layered patterns. Fishermen pass carrying woven nets draped across their shoulders. Their voices carry the low cadence of people accustomed to waking before dawn. A boy runs ahead of them laughing as he chases a stray dog that darts between mooring posts. Records confirm that the Euphrates form the economic lifeline of Babylon, sustaining irrigation networks and facilitating trade routes stretching across vast regions. Tablets interpreted by scholars connected with institutions such as Stanford and Oxford describe intricate canal systems designed to regulate water levels and ensure fertile harvests. As you watch the river's steady movement, you sense how its patient rhythm shapes every aspect of life here. You pause beside a small wooden dock where a narrow boat rocks gently against its tether. The rope creaks in a slow, familiar pattern. A man kneels at the water's edge, rinsing clay jars until their surfaces gleam in the sunlight. The river laps against his hands, leaving glistening droplets that catch the light before slipping back into the current. You feel an unexpected urge to touch the water yourself to confirm its cool reality. A curious footnote preserved in certain later writings suggests that some Babylonian households kept small river shrines adorned with shells and painted stones. These modest altars were believed to honor the spirit of the flowing waters that sustained the city's prosperity. Whether such customs were widespread or limited to particular communities remains uncertain, yet the idea lends a quiet sacredness to the bustling riverbank. Scholars still disagree on the extent to which seasonal flooding along the Euphrates was viewed as a blessing or a threat. Some interpret historical records as evidence of sophisticated flood control measures that minimized risk. Others propose that unpredictable surges occasionally disrupted entire neighborhoods. The debate continues, reminding you that even the most vital forces of nature carry both promise and peril. You walk along the bank, noticing how the ground shifts from firm clay to softer sand, scattered with fragments of pottery and worn reeds. Women gather nearby, washing garments with rhythmic precision. Their laughter rises and falls like birdsong. A merchant calls out the price of dried fish, stacked in neat rows upon a woven mat. The smell is strong yet oddly reassuring, a testament to the river's generous yield. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside recorded by later observers claims that smugglers sometimes used hidden compartments within river boats to transport goods that evaded official tariffs. Under cover of night, whispered negotiations and careful handoffs unfolded beneath the watchful stars. Whether these tales reflect common practice or imaginative exaggeration remains uncertain, yet the thought adds a subtle thrill to the tranquil scene. You notice children wading at the shallows, their feet stirring clouds of silt that drift like pale ghosts beneath the surface. They splash and shout unconcerned, with the broader current shaping their world. Watching them, you feel the timeless continuity of human experience. Joy persists even amid the complexities of empire and ambition. A breeze rises, carrying the cry of distant gulls and the creak of oars dipping into water. Larger barges glide along the river's centre, their hulls heavy with sacks of grain or bundles of dyed cloth bound for distant markets. The sight reminds you that Babylon's influence extends far beyond its towering walls. Every journey downstream or upstream becomes part of a wider narrative of exchange and connection. In your ears, the soundscape of the river merges with the pulse of the city. Bells ring faintly from the temple precincts. Hammer blows echo from a workshop hidden among clustered dwellings. The overlapping rhythms form a living symphony, one that evolves with each passing hour. Your mind drifts toward the realization that civilizations like rivers depend upon balance. Too much force can erode foundations. Too little movement can invite stagnation. Here along the Euphrates you witness both stability and change unfolding, side by side shaping lives in ways both visible and unseen. You linger a moment longer, watching sunlight dance upon rippling currents. Then, guided by distant music and the promise of new encounters, you turn away from the riverbank and follow a narrow lane leading deeper into the vibrant heart of Babylon's celebrations. The lane carries you gradually away from the steady murmur of the river and into a district already alive with anticipation. The sun has climbed higher, warming clay walls until they release the faint scent of dust and sun-baked earth. Colourful streamers hang between doorways. Garlands of woven reeds and fresh blossoms sway gently in the breeze. You sense at once that this part of Babylon prepares not for ordinary trade or quiet routine, but for celebration. For a moment it feels as though the entire city has shifted its mood. Laughter rises more freely. Footsteps quicken with purpose. Somewhere ahead, drums begin to pulse in a slow and inviting rhythm. The sound travels through narrow streets and open courtyards alike, guiding your path like a heartbeat you cannot ignore. You emerge into a wide plaza framed by tall wooden poles wrapped in bright cloth. Lanterns remain suspended from their crossbeams even in daylight, as though waiting for night to return. Vendors arrange trays of honey cakes dusted with crushed nuts. Clay jars filled with fermented date wine glisten in the sunlight. The air tastes sweet and slightly sharp, hinting at indulgence and possibility. Records confirm that Babylonian religious calendars included elaborate festivals dedicated to major deities, particularly during the New Year rites honouring Marduk. Clay inscriptions studied by scholars connected with universities such as Stanford and Oxford describe processions, music ritual reenactments, and public feasting that could last for days. As you watch preparations unfold around you, you sense how celebration here becomes a powerful expression of communal identity. A curious footnote preserved in later accounts suggests that during certain festivities, participants wore masks shaped like lions or mythical creatures to symbolize divine presence among the crowd. Whether these costumes were common practice or limited to specific ceremonies remains uncertain. Yet the image comes vividly to mind as you notice a craftsman painting bright pigments onto carved wooden faces. Musicians gather at one side of the plaza, tuning their instruments with practiced ease. A lute releases a cascade of notes that shimmer briefly before dissolving into the warm air. A drummer tests the tension of stretched hide, producing a resonant thud that vibrates through your chest. Nearby dancers rehearse graceful turns, their anklets chiming softly with each movement. Scholars still disagree on how much of these festivals reflected genuine spiritual devotion and how much functioned as political theatre reinforcing royal authority. Some interpret the rituals as heartfelt expressions of faith. Others argue that spectacle and ceremony helped unify diverse populations under a shared narrative. The debate continues, reminding you that joy and strategy often intertwine within public celebration. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside recorded by ancient commentators claims that taverns near festival grounds sometimes became scenes of spirited rivalry, with patrons competing to outsing or outdrink one another. These contests, though unofficial, were said to draw crowds eager for entertainment. Whether such tales are exaggerated or grounded in everyday reality remains uncertain, yet you can easily imagine the laughter and clamour they describe. As the day progresses, the plaza grows more crowded. Families arrive carrying baskets of food wrapped in linen cloth. Children chase one another between rows of poles, their laughter bright as bells. An elderly storyteller settles onto a low stool, preparing to recount myths that blend heroism with cautionary wisdom. You feel yourself becoming part of the gathering, another witness to the city's unfolding pageantry. A breeze stirs overhead, sending petals drifting across the paving stones like fragments of colour in motion. Sunlight glints from polished jewellery and painted ceramic cups raised in cheerful greeting. The atmosphere feels both festive and deeply rooted. as though each gesture echoes traditions repeated across generations. In your ears, the music swells into a lively tempo. Dancers step forward in synchronized patterns, their garments swirling in arcs of crimson and gold. The rhythm invites movement, and for a brief instant you feel the urge to join them, to surrender to the shared pulse that dissolves individual boundaries. Celebration here is not merely observed, it is lived. Your mind drifts toward the realization that such moments of joy provide necessary balance to the discipline of law and the solemnity of ritual. Without them, the weight of existence might become unbearable. Babylon's festivals offer release, reminding its inhabitants that life includes wonder as well as obligation. As shadows begin to lengthen across the plaza, attendants light the suspended lanterns one by one. Their flames flicker into existence like small suns, promising an evening of music, storytelling, and perhaps a touch of excess. You feel curiosity stir within you once more. Beyond the laughter and wine, deeper currents may be waiting to reveal themselves. With a steady breath, you step forward into the bright swirl of colour and sound, ready to discover how celebration can blur the line between devotion and desire in the city of wonders and sin. Lantern light now deepens into warm pools of gold as evening gathers gently over Babylon. The festive plaza you leave behind still hums with music and laughter, yet the street ahead feels quieter, more deliberate. Shadows stretch across the paving stones. The air carries a cooler note touched by the faint scent of smoke drifting from rooftop hearths. You sense that another layer of the city is about to reveal itself, one shaped less by celebration and more by ambition. For a moment, it feels as though you are stepping into a carefully arranged stage where voices are lowered not from reverence but from caution. The buildings here appear more austere. Their walls are thicker, their entrances guarded by carved stone figures that watch the street with impassive expressions. Torches burn steadily in iron brackets. Their flames illuminate banners bearing unfamiliar emblems, symbols of distant lands drawn into Babylon's vast sphere of influence. You pass beneath a colonnade where travellers in richly woven garments gather in small groups. Their speech flows in accents shaped by mountains, deserts, and coastal winds. One man gestures toward a map etched upon a wax tablet. Another listens intently, his fingers resting upon a ring engraved with a foreign crest. You realize that these are envoys and merchants representing kingdoms far beyond the Euphrates. Records confirm that Babylon functioned as a diplomatic hub connecting major civilizations of the ancient Near East. Administrative tablets interpreted by scholars connected with institutions such as Yale and Oxford reveal negotiations concerning tribute trade rights and military alliances. As you observe the subtle choreography of conversation unfolding before you, you sense how empire extends not only through conquest but through carefully crafted words. A curious footnote preserved in later chronicles suggests that some foreign visitors carried gifts designed to astonish the Babylonian court, from rare metals to exotic animals never before seen within the city's walls. Whether such displays were common or exceptional remains uncertain, yet you imagine the stir of wonder these offerings must have created among palace officials and curious onlookers alike. You pause beside a shallow fountain set within a paved courtyard. Its gentle trickle provides a soothing counterpoint to the tense undertones of negotiation. Nearby, a pair of scribes waits attentively, styluses poised above soft clay tablets. Their presence reminds you that every promise spoken here may soon become a record binding distant peoples together. Scholars still disagree on whether Babylon's diplomatic practices relied more heavily on mutual cooperation or subtle intimidation. Some interpret historical evidence as proof of pragmatic alliances forged through shared interests. Others argue that the city's formidable reputation often influenced negotiations before formal discussions even began. The debate continues, reflecting the complexity of power exercised across cultural boundaries. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside recorded by ancient commentators claims that rival envoys sometimes attempted to gather intelligence by befriending palace servants or frequenting popular taverns. Secrets, it was said, could be loosened by a cup of wine and a well-chosen compliment. Whether such intrigue was widespread or limited to isolated incidents remains uncertain, yet the possibility lingers like a shadow at the edge of torchlight. As night deepens, musicians play softly within the courtyard, their melodies restrained and contemplative. The sound seems designed to encourage reflection rather than revelry. You notice how gestures among the assembled figures remain courteous yet guarded. Smiles appear and vanish with practiced ease, hands clasp in greeting then withdraw. Trust here feels like a carefully measured commodity. In your ears, fragments of conversation drift past. References to caravan routes, harvest yields, and distant conflicts mingle into a tapestry of strategic thought. You realize that decisions shaped in this quiet district may alter the lives of countless individuals far beyond the city's walls. The awareness lends weight to the simple act of standing and listening. Your mind drifts toward the realization that diplomacy is itself a form of theatre, one where words replace weapons, yet outcomes can be equally profound. Babylon's envoys and guests navigate this delicate stage with skill honed by necessity. Each pause, each nod becomes part of a language understood across cultures. A cool breeze sweeps through the courtyard, stirring the surface of the fountain into shimmering ripples. Lantern flames flicker but do not falter. You feel a subtle sense of transition, as though the city invites you to witness not only its public splendor, but also its hidden calculations. With unhurried steps, you leave the colonnade behind and follow a narrow passage that curves toward dimly lit dwellings and quieter corners where whispered truths and moral tensions wait to reveal themselves beneath the watchful Babylonian night. The passage narrows as you follow its winding curve away from the formal courtyards of diplomacy. Here the walls lean closer together, their surfaces marked by time and the faint graffiti of passing hands. Lanterns hang lower, their light softer and more uncertain. Shadows gather in doorways and beneath overhanging balconies. The air holds a mixture of scents that feel more intimate than before. You notice warm bread, damp clay-spiced wine, and the lingering trace of perfumed oil carried on garments brushing past you. For a moment, it feels as though the city is revealing its private voice. Laughter becomes quieter, more layered. A whispered argument rises from an unseen window and dissolves into silence. Somewhere a stringed instrument plucks a hesitant melody, its notes drifting across the narrow lane like fragments of thought. You sense that this district belongs less to public ceremony and more to personal desire and quiet negotiation. You pass a small courtyard where a group of neighbours sits upon low stools arranged in a loose circle. A clay lamp rests at their centre. Its flame illuminates faces lined with both fatigue and affection. A woman pours dark liquid into shallow cups, while an older man recounts a tale punctuated by knowing smiles. You realize that beneath Babylon's monumental grandeur lies a web of ordinary connections sustained through shared evenings such as this. Records confirm that domestic life in ancient Mesopotamian cities often revolved around enclosed courtyards, providing privacy and shelter from heat. Archaeological interpretations discussed by scholars, connected with institutions such as Stanford and Oxford, reveal the central importance of these spaces in fostering family bonds and informal community networks. As you linger at the edge of the gathering, you sense how resilience is cultivated through companionship as much as through law or ritual. A curious footnote preserved in certain later narratives suggests that some households hung small clay charms above their doorways to ward off gossip or envy from neighbours. Whether this custom was symbolic or sincerely believed to influence fortune remains uncertain, yet you notice several door frames adorned with simple shapes that seem both protective and decorative. Scholars still disagree on how moral expectations were enforced within such close-knit communities. Some argue that collective reputation guided behaviour more effectively than formal authority. Others propose that unspoken tensions could simmer beneath outward harmony, occasionally erupting into disputes recorded only in fragmentary accounts. The absence of consensus lends a subtle complexity to the quiet scenes unfolding around you. You continue along the lane until you reach a modest tavern whose open doorway spills warm light onto the pavement. Inside, voices mingle with the clatter of cups and the soft shuffle of sandals. The scent of fermented dates and roasted barley wraps around you like an invitation. A young musician plays a lively tune while patrons sway gently in time. Their expressions range from carefree amusement to thoughtful introspection. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside recorded by ancient commentators claims that such taverns sometimes served as meeting places for clandestine romances or political whispers exchanged beneath the cover of music. Whether these tales exaggerate reality or reflect common practice remains uncertain, yet you sense how easily secrets could travel along these crowded benches. You pause beside a low table where two friends debate animatedly over a game involving carved pieces arranged upon a wooden board. Their laughter erupts, suddenly dissolving any hint of rivalry. The moment feels disarmingly familiar. Across centuries, the desire for companionship and diversion remains unchanged. In your ears, the sounds of the tavern blend with distant footsteps and the occasional bark of a stray dog roaming the darkened streets. The night has grown deeper now. Above the rooftops, stars shine with renewed clarity. Their cold light contrasts with the warmth radiating from human gatherings below. Your mind drifts towards the realization that Babylon's splendor cannot be understood solely through temples and palaces. Its true character emerges in these quieter corners where people navigate love, ambition, disappointment, and hope. The city of wonders and sin reveals itself not only in grand ceremonies but in everyday choices shaped by emotion and circumstance. A gentle breeze slips through the tavern doorway, carrying with it the faint fragrance of night-blooming flowers from a nearby garden. The music softens. Conversations turn more reflective. You feel the pace of your own thoughts slow as though guided by the city's nocturnal rhythm. With a quiet breath, you step back into the narrow lane and follow its path toward higher rooftops and darker silhouettes. Somewhere above, scholars observe the heavens, seeking patterns that promise meaning beyond the restless pulse of human life. The lane begins to climb once more, rising in gentle turns that lead you away from the murmuring taverns and dim courtyards. The air grows clearer with each step. Night settles fully across Babylon, now wrapping the city in a deep velvet hush, broken only by the scattered echoes of music and distant conversation. Above you, the sky opens like an immense dark sea, scattered with points of living fire. You feel drawn upward as though the stars themselves have extended an invitation. For a moment, it feels as though you are leaving the human world behind. The rooftops here are broad and flat, joined by their narrow bridges of packed earth and timber. Clay parapets cast long shadows under the pale light of a waxing moon. You climb a final staircase and emerge onto an open platform where several figures stand in quiet concentration, their gazes fixed upon the heavens. A low table holds instruments both simple and precise, and polished rods lie beside shallow bowls filled with sand used to steady, delicate measurements. Wax tablets bear carefully inscribed lines marking the slow passage of time. You notice how the scholars move with restrained purpose, their gestures measured, yet filled with anticipation. One lifts a slender stylus and traces a point in the sky, guiding the eyes of a younger apprentice. Records confirm that Babylonian astronomers developed remarkably sophisticated methods for tracking planetary motion and predicting celestial events. Clay tablets interpreted by researchers connected with institutions such as Yale and Oxford reveal mathematical patterns that influenced later scientific traditions across the ancient world. As you watch the observers at work, you sense how curiosity here becomes a form of devotion directed not toward gods alone, but toward the structure of the universe itself. A curious footnote preserved in certain classical writings suggests that some astrologers believed particular stars governed the fortunes of entire cities. These luminous sentinels were said to send warnings through subtle shifts in brightness or position. Whether such interpretations were grounded in empirical observation or symbolic imagination remains uncertain, yet the notion lends an added intensity to the silent vigil unfolding around you. The night air feels cool against your skin. It carries the faint scent of ash from hearth fires below, and the sharper fragrance of herbs planted in rooftop gardens. A gentle breeze stirs your garment and ripples across the surface of a nearby water jar, creating small rings that shimmer briefly before fading. The stillness encourages reflection. You become aware of your own breath, aligning with the slow rhythm of celestial movement. Scholars still disagree on the precise relationship between Babylonian astronomy and astrology. Some argue that meticulous observation gradually separated scientific inquiry from spiritual interpretation. Others maintain that both remained intertwined for centuries, shaping decisions in governance and personal life alike. The debate continues, reminding you that knowledge itself evolves through questioning and reinterpretation. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside recorded by later commentators claims that rival scholars occasionally guarded their star charts with intense secrecy, fearing that stolen calculations might enhance a competitor's reputation at court. Whether such rivalry was widespread, or merely the embellishment of storytellers, remains uncertain, yet the possibility adds a human dimension to the serene scene beneath the constellations. You move closer to the edge of the platform and gaze across the sleeping city. Lanterns flicker like scattered embers. The Euphrates glimmers faintly beyond the rooftops, reflecting fragments of starlight in its slow current. Somewhere a watchman calls out the hour. His voice travels across the night in measured intervals, reminding all who listen that time continues its quiet advance. In your ears, the soft murmur of scholarly discussion blends with the whisper of wind passing over clay and timber. You feel a subtle connection between the calculations unfolding beside you and the lives unfolding below. Each tablet inscribed with planetary cycles represents an attempt to understand destiny itself. Each prediction offers comfort in a world shaped by uncertainty. Your mind drifts toward the realization that the search for cosmic order mirrors the search for personal meaning. Just as these observers chart the paths of wandering stars, so too do individuals chart their own courses through ambition, love and fear. Babylon becomes both laboratory and metaphor, a place where earthly and celestial concerns meet. Gradually, the scholars begin to pack away their instruments. One by one they descend narrow stairways toward quieter chambers where numbers and symbols will be reviewed by lamplight. You linger a moment longer beneath the open sky, allowing its vastness to settle gently within you. Then, guided by an unspoken awareness that all journeys approach their turning points, you follow the downward path toward darker streets where whispers of prophecy and the first hints of decline begin to shape the city's restless dreams. The descent from the rooftop observatory feels quieter than any path you have taken so far. The city below seems unchanged at first glance, yet something in the air has shifted. A subtle tension lingers like a distant storm, not yet visible on the horizon. Torches burn with the same steady glow. Guards pace their familiar routes. Still you sense a new undercurrent beneath the rhythms of Babylon's night. For a moment it feels as though the very bricks hold their breath. You walk along a broad avenue where shadows gather more densely than before. A gust of wind sweeps dust across the paving stones, erasing faint footprints almost as soon as they appear. The scent of smoke from household fires carries a sharper edge, mingled with the metallic tang of weapons being polished somewhere out of sight. Records confirm that even at the height of its splendor, Babylon faced external pressures from rival powers and shifting alliances. Historical interpretations discussed by scholars connected with institutions such as Yale and Stanford suggest that the city's political strength could not entirely shield it from the ambitions of emerging empires. As you pass a row of silent statues depicting past victories, you sense how triumph and vulnerability often coexist within the same moment. A curious footnote preserved in later chronicles recounts rumours that prophetic dreams circulated among citizens during periods of uncertainty. These visions, whispered in courtyards and marketplaces, spoke of distant armies and gates opening under cover of darkness. Whether such stories reflect genuine collective anxiety or the embellishment of later historians remains uncertain, yet their emotional weight feels tangible in the stillness surrounding you. You notice a group of soldiers gathered near a watchtower. Their voices remain low, their expressions thoughtful. One studies the horizon beyond the walls as though expecting movement where only night wind stirs the plain. Another tightens the strap of his shield with deliberate care. Their discipline conveys readiness, yet also hints at unspoken questions. Scholars still disagree on the precise sequence of events that led to Babylon's eventual fall. Some argue that strategic miscalculations weakened its defences. Others propose that internal divisions eroded unity long before foreign forces approached. The debate continues, reminding you that history rarely unfolds as a single clear narrative. Instead, it emerges through overlapping interpretations shaped by fragmentary. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside recorded by certain ancient commentators claims that rival factions within the city occasionally spread exaggerated rumours to gain influence or discredit opponents. Fear, it seems, could become a tool as potent as any spear. Whether these tales reflect widespread intrigue or isolated episodes remains uncertain, yet the possibility lingers like a shadow cast by flickering flame. As you continue along the avenue, you pass a temple where a lone priest tends a small fire upon an altar. His chant is softer than those you heard before, almost mournful. The smoke rises in thin strands that dissolve into the dark sky. You feel the weight of countless prayers seeking reassurance in uncertain times. Faith here becomes both refuge and question. In your ears, the familiar sounds of Babylon seem altered. Laughter from distant taverns is shorter, less carefree. Footsteps echo with sharp urgency. Even the steady flow of the Euphrates carries a tone that feels more contemplative than before. The city remains vibrant, yet its confidence appears tempered by awareness of change. Your mind drifts toward the realization that greatness often contains the seeds of its own transformation. Ambition builds walls and gardens. It also invites rivalry in the passage of time. Babylon's wonders do not vanish in an instant. They begin to shift in subtle ways, preparing the ground for new chapters yet to unfold. A breeze sweeps through the avenue, stirring banners that hang from high poles. Their cloth rustles, like whispered conversation. You pause beneath one of the great gates you admired earlier, studying the lion reliefs, now half hidden in shadow. Their carved eyes seem to watch the darkness beyond the walls with silent vigilance. Gradually, the eastern sky shows the faintest hint of approaching dawn. A pale line appears where night meets earth. You sense that your journey through Babylon nears its final movement. The city's grandeur, its pleasures, its tensions all blend into a tapestry both luminous and fragile. With unhurried steps, you move toward the outer precincts, guided by the growing light and the quiet knowledge that every encounter with wonder must eventually give way to farewell. The first light of dawn stretches gently across the horizon as you approach the great outer walls once more. Their immense silhouette, which once rose before you in mystery and promise, now appears softened by familiarity. The Ishtar Gate stands in quiet dignity, its deep blue surfaces touched by pale gold sunlight. Lions and sacred creatures seem less like guardians now, and more like companions who have silently observed your passage through the city's many layers. For a moment it feels as though time itself pauses to acknowledge your departure. The air is cool and fresh. Dew gathers along the edges of worn paving stones. A faint scent of river mist drifts toward you, mingling with the lingering traces of incense and wood smoke that still cling to the morning breeze. You become aware of how deeply the rhythms of Babylon have settled within your thoughts. Records confirm that this city, despite its eventual decline, left a profound legacy in architecture, governance, astronomy, and literature. Interpretations discussed by scholars connected with institutions such as Stanford and Oxford emphasize how Babylonian innovations influence cultures far beyond Mesopotamia. As you stand beneath the towering arch, you sense that history does not end when walls crumble. It continues through memory and transmission. A curious footnote preserved in later writings recounts how Travellers departing Babylon sometimes turned back for a final glance as though reluctant to release the vision of its splendour. Whether this gesture was born of admiration or unease remains uncertain, yet you feel the same quiet impulse stir within you. The city's presence lingers like an unfinished melody. Scholars still debate whether Babylon's reputation for moral excess was exaggerated by rival civilizations eager to portray it as decadent. Some argue that tales of indulgence reflect genuine cultural tensions between discipline and pleasure. Others suggest that these stories reveal more about the fears of observers than about the daily realities of Babylonian life. The lack of agreement leaves space for reflection rather than judgment. Oddly enough, one scandalous aside recorded by ancient commentators claims that certain citizens celebrated the city's final years with even greater fervour, as though aware that glory might soon fade. Festivals grew brighter. Music echoed longer into the night. Whether this account captures truth or poetic symbolism remains uncertain, yet it adds a poignant note to your farewell. You step beyond the gate and pause upon the dusty road beside the Euphrates. The river glides past with patient indifference, carrying reflections of sunrise upon its surface. Boats begin their daily journeys. Fishermen cast nets that unfurl like silver wings before sinking into the current. Life continues in steady motion, unaffected by the rise and fall of empires. In your ears, the sounds of Babylon diminish gradually. The murmur of markets, the chant of priests, the laughter of festivals all blend into a distant echo. You realize that the city now exists not only behind you, but also within you. Its gardens, courts, and shadowed lanes have become part of your own inner landscape. Your mind drifts toward the realization that every civilization is both fleeting and enduring. Buildings may erode, records may fracture, yet the human longing for wonder, order, and connection persists across centuries. Babylon's story becomes a mirror reflecting universal patterns of aspiration and transformation. You walk a little farther along the riverbank, allowing the warmth of the rising sun to settle upon your shoulders. Birds circle above the reeds, their cries bright and unburdened. A gentle wind lifts the edge of your garment, urging you onward. The journey ahead feels open and unhurried. Gradually you find a quiet place to rest. You sit upon the soft earth and watch the city's silhouette recede into morning haze. Its towers blur into the sky until they seem almost imagined. A sense of calm spreads through you as though the weight of centuries is softened into a simple awareness of presence. Now the pace of your thoughts slows. Sentences stretch into longer breaths. The sounds around you grow more diffuse, like ripples fading across still water. You remember the scent of cedar smoke in temple halls. You recall the shimmer of lanterns above festival crowds. Each memory becomes a gentle thread woven into the fabric of your quiet reflection. Allow your shoulders to loosen. Let your gaze rest upon the slow movement of the Euphrates. Notice how sunlight dances upon its surface in small, reassuring patterns. The river does not hurry. It moves with patient confidence, certain that its path will continue long after the footsteps of travellers fade. You sense that your journey through Babylon has reached its natural conclusion. Wonder does not vanish. It transforms into understanding. The city's grandeur settles into a peaceful echo that no longer demands attention. Instead, it offers a soft reminder that history, like a distant song, can accompany you without disturbing your rest. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel the warmth of morning, the whisper of wind, the steady rhythm of water. Let these sensations carry you gently toward stillness. The city of wonders and sin fades into a calm horizon of memory, leaving behind only the quiet assurance that every ending also holds the promise of renewal. Sweet dreams.